Hello and welcome to May the Review be with you with Nick and Joe. I'm Joe.
And I'm Nick, and today we are talking about The Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's latest installment in his filmography, obviously based on a historic story and book or poem, if you will, whatever. We're not having that conversation. But yeah, we're fresh off of the movie, the newest Christopher Nolan film. I'm coming at you from not quite a closet, but I'm on vacation, and Joe and I had to talk about this, so excuse my background. And
I'm just going to say, I've definitely approached this show in much worse locations than you.
Yeah, this is pretty good for us. Joe's got some historically bad situations in the past.
Yes, indeed.
But yeah, The Odyssey, I mean, a spectacle, honestly. That was... I watched this on 1.5 hours of sleep, like 12 hours of travel, took like an hour and a half nap at the hotel, went to see The Odyssey in an Italian movie theater, which is also like very different than an American theater in a fun way. And yeah, I think the first half I was just having an out-of-body experience, thinking about comparing it to the book, because Joe and I did read the book previously, and specifically the Emily Wilson version, which is the one that Nolan used primarily to help him write, base the story and this movie. So we both read that. And yeah, it took me about half the movie to settle in and stop thinking about the book as much. And then really the back half of the movie I really enjoyed more, especially because I remembered a lot more of that back half of it from the book. And then it was kind of cool to see how he was like envisioning these things. But yeah, Joe, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Quick thoughts.
Zero Phaeacians, first of all. Zero Phaeacians in this movie.
Right.
But Nick, I think it's very funny that we both saw this movie with sleep deprivation, although it sounds like you had it much worse than I did. There was a moment where I was sitting in the nice dark theater and realizing that I was about to go on my own Odyssey for 3 hours, and I was like, am I going to make it through this movie?
Yeah.
That was not a problem. That was not an issue.
Right. Yeah.
The movie is very compelling. Anything positive that you're hearing about this movie, none of it's hype. It's all very solid. It's all very realistic as far as what Nolan and his team were able to accomplish on camera. It really cannot be understated, the word or the use of the word epic. It is indeed epic.
And the sound editing alone will keep you awake. That is a guarantee.
That is true. I will say, Nick, before we get into like the nit and grit of it, I've heard people say that this is Nolan's best film. I don't know if I agree with that necessarily. Yeah. I think it's great. I think the movie is fantastic. At least for me, it is not my favorite Nolan film. And there are reasons why, and we'll get into that down the road. But now is a good time to really start talking about the film. And of course, before we do, it is time for our 15-second summary. And I am so glad that I don't have to summarize a 3-hour movie in 15 seconds. But you know who does?
Me.
My
Poor
co-host.
Nick. Poor old Nicky. Just hit me with the countdown.
The way that this works is Nick has 15 seconds to summarize this entire film, and I will grade him at the end. We'll see how he does. Nick, how are we feeling?
Just not great, but go ahead.
All right. On 3, 2, 1, go. Begin. 3, 2, 1.
The Odyssey picks up after the Iliad and the fall of Troy. Odysseus is on a 20-year journey to try to come back home while he also rattles with the grips of potentially failing the world with his change in how war is played. I couldn't think of what I was trying to say. That was so bad. That was not terrible. I got the plot. I mean,
you got the plot. You got the plot.
God.
But
what I was trying to say at the end was how, he comes to a realization that by breaking the rules of engagement, essentially, with offering a gift and then breaking that rule, he essentially started he broke the law of the gods, which I forgot to say.
When Nick and I spoke about a 15-second summary before this episode, I said, this is either really easy or really hard, depending on your approach. And Nick chose the Odysseus approach of going home and making it as difficult as possible for himself.
Yeah. Naturally.
I will give you a C for attempting the theme of this movie, which was the more difficult route.
Thank you. Very generous. I almost had it if I would have remembered, breaking the law of Zeus in the moment.
So Nick, I think that's actually a really good place to start. Is
Great.
is in what you were attempting there in the theme of this movie, and we will talk about the actual film itself, but I just want to bring this up as like one of a difference. Like if you were familiar with the 80s film, or if you were familiar with just the poem itself, there are some, I don't want to call them differences. There are some interpretations in here that came as a surprise for at least me. I would assume most viewers, that I actually really enjoy. I really liked some of his interpretations, and we will get to that. By the way, this will be a spoiler-filled review, so if you are looking for a non-spoiler-filled review, this is your time to exit now.
The story's 3,000 years old. If you're looking for a spoiler filled, get at it. Just I don't know what to tell you.
Well, when I say that, I do mean the interpretations, because I do. If you haven't seen this film yet, and obviously like you're familiar with the poem, like okay, how this story's gonna go. But like I said, there are two interpretations in this movie that you probably would not necessarily see coming, and I really, really enjoyed them.
Yeah, good point.
In any case, yeah. So Nick, all right, you told me you were in an hour and a half worth of sleep, and you enjoyed the heck out of this movie.
Right.
What'd you enjoy?
Man, God, like the amount of just like the cinematography in general was really like breathtaking, and like I mean no one could have done this so perfectly, like other than Nolan, right? I mean his like adamancy on using like practical effects and putting the actors like in the environments, and even down to like the score, right? Like Ludwig Jorgensen, I forget how to say his last name, but even like he wasn't allowed to use an orchestra for the score, so he had to like find all these like unique ways to like recreate music that would have been like existing around that time, right? And so like all these like little details built up to this like amazing, as you said earlier, epic, right? And we just get this really an incredible feat, right? And I said earlier that like the first half it almost took me half the movie to like really settle in, because it was just from the beginning so big and so impressive to just like see how they were doing everything, that it really took me like half the movie to really settle into like the actual story and get me like enough like done being in awe of just what I was like seeing. And I didn't even see it in IMAX, like just on 35 millimeter, and I'm still just like, what the heck? So I mean the IMAX thing is a whole nother level. Yeah, it's my quick thoughts.
My quick thoughts. I was blown away by some certain performances. I thought I was a little concerned about, and I think you shared this concern with me too, Nick, of Matt Damon playing Odysseus and how that was going to work. And for how the film is structured, as far as the language that is used, which is a bit more contemporary than what we would be familiar with in the Odyssey, I thought it actually worked really well. I thought Matt Damon was pretty damn good, and like once we got to certain action scenes, like I understood why they chose Matt Damon to be this role, and I was quite happy with his performance. My favorite scene in the movie, however, is definitely the encounter with Cersei, and Samantha Morton's performance as Cersei is, for me, it is the standout scene of the entire film. I would say that I have a couple issues with the film. One of them is because of how big it is and how many A-lister actors we have. It's really hard for some of the A-listers to really get a chance to really like expand on their roles. There are some standout exceptions, and Samantha Morton is like the standout exception for me. That scene with Cersei the Witch is so intense and so scary.
Like that, and then the Cyclops scenes
done exceptionally well.
Nolan is bordering on horror film like status here, like with those two like scenes, right? Which is, I wonder, because I had seen something recently about him potentially wanting to get into do like an actual horror film, and I wonder if these are two like kind of precursors to him like testing some things out there. But those scenes were very like disturbing in their own ways and excellent. Those two sequences. It's a great point about so many A-list actors and not being able to maybe fully settle in, right? Like Charlize Theron's in there playing Calypso, thank you. And that was really cool, but you can definitely feel that maybe there's a little settling in issue with it being like fully there for you, right? Like
I mean,
it's so
same thing. It's the same issue with like Zendaya as
yeah,
Athena, right?
right,
I mean,
totally.
like I love seeing Zendaya on screen. She has wonderful presence, but yeah, she doesn't get to do too much in the role
Right.
of Athena, which is surprising, given Athena's role in the poem. But we'll
Right.
get to that later.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. And then like someone like Agamemnon, no lines except for the part where they're in Hades, right? So like you don't have any living lines from him, but still like an insane presence. Like the he was just massive. Like
Yeah.
just incredible how they made him so much bigger and badder than everyone else in those few scenes that he was there. It was just so
Let's
incredible.
let's unpack that for a second, because yeah, I have some thoughts on that I was very interested in. Because like you said, we don't hear Agamemnon speak until our scene in Hades, which by the way, I had three scenes that I was really looking forward to: Cyclops, Circe, and Hades, and all three they just like you
They
said,
were great.
spectacle. They were great.
Yeah,
But anyway,
spectacle.
so Agamemnon, we do not hear him speak, and every time he is on screen, the camera pays special attention to building up this like very large presence that people are very like, even his own men are very scared of. And it's very clear that that's the feeling that we're supposed to take away from this. Why do you think that is? Why do you think Nolan really stressed this so much, especially when you take into consideration the theme of this movie, like this darkness that is spreading, this endless violence that Matt Damon, that Odysseus believes that he has started.
Oh man, I that's such a great question. But I mean, Agamemnon's supposed to be, he's the king, right? Like he's the all powerful being here in this like part of the world, and so he's supposed to have this like external presence that's just bigger than everyone else, and everyone's fighting for him, right? Out on his orders, right? Because his brother's wife was taken or left him, or whatever.
Well, so this is actually something that the movie adds, right? That's not the real reason why they went to war. That's the reason in the poem, but
Yeah,
the movie tells us, Odysseus tells us that the real reason is to open the trade routes that Troy has closed down.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Which that's an interesting ad, right? Like,
Hmm. Well, I think it. So nothing here is wasted, right? So I think that this speaks to the theme, which is men's greed, right? And like
mhm.
what it's willing to do to satiate the appetite. In the poem, that's something that comes up a lot is the hunger, right? And how hunger is never satiated. So I'm venturing here, speculating a bit that perhaps that is why that they threw that in there. As for Agamemnon, and like you said, how big of a presence he
Mhm.
casts, there are certain characters, not just in the movie, in the poem, obviously. And I will say, as far as differentiating the poem and the movie, Homer's Odyssey is Homer's Odyssey. This is Nolan's Odyssey, and this
Right.
is going to be different in a lot of ways. There are a lot of characters that represent a lot of different things, right? And one of those things is like very clear at the end of the movie, as far as like Athena's role, right, and what she represents. Movie really takes a second to like let you know about that.
Right.
I think Agamemnon, I think he's literally death, and I think that's why we never hear him speak until
Until
he
he's
is
dead.
in
Wow.
Hades, until he's dead. Like, and there's an irony
Yeah,
to that, right?
I love that.
Yeah, I would say his biggest role as death, or like where this really feels solid to me, is my favorite shot of the movie, and that is the Troy sequence, which is phenomenal, by the way. And the Greeks open the gates of Troy.
Hmm.
And the first thing you see is Agamemnon just standing there in darkness. And then
Yeah.
10 years of rage, the men come pouring into the city and just
Yeah.
start brooding. So, like, for
Yeah.
me, I think that's what he's supposed to represent. I think that's why he's not talking.
Wow, that's a great point. And that scene is insane in and of itself. And the cool thing there too is, and we talked about this in our Nolan Fest episode with, Nolan's like themes in his films being time and obsession. And the second that the men are inside the horse and they start being dragged inside the gates of Troy, there is like a timer in the background. there's like the music and the score and the tension just starts to build. And the second they drop out of that horse and they start their invasion, from the second they hit the ground from the horse until they get the gates open, the tension that you feel is just like so insane and dynamic, and it just grows and grows and grows and grows. And it just reminds me of so many of the other big scenes from other Nolan films with this tension growing, right? And we've talked about this in previous episodes. And so that stands out as like a huge scene, right? Just that moment between getting out of the horse and opening the gates. And then, of course, this like changes everything, right? And this is like one of the greatest stories ever told. And it's incredible.
I think you are absolutely right to call that out as far as like a Nolan like time technique, because he did the same exact thing in Oppenheimer when we're waiting for the Trinity test. Because
Right.
it's one of those things where like we, the viewer, already know what's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's taking advantage of that. He's taking advantage of the fact that you already have this knowledge, this expectation, and he's dragging it out in like the best way possible. And you're waiting for all hell to break loose. You just don't know when Pandora's box is going to open here, right? Or what it's even going to look like when it does. And tick, 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 and then the explosion happens. And this time the explosion was a bunch of Greeks waiting outside, right?
Yeah.
Crazy
Indeed. There's also the other, I mean, I know you brought up Oppenheimer. The other thing that really gave me like an Oppenheimer thought is, the big thing in Oppenheimer is that like the big overlying theme that you find out at the end is that Robert Oppenheimer thinks that, he started a chain reaction that cannot be undone, right?
Yeah.
And Odysseus has the same exact thought throughout this film, and it's the big overarching theme at the end, right? That he thinks because he broke a rule of war, right? Offered a gift and then betrayed them with this gift.
The Trojan horse being the gift here.
The Trojan horse being the gift, and then betrays that trust, right? He thinks he started a chain reaction that essentially is causing the world, over the 20 years that he's working to get back home, that causes the world to no longer believe in the laws of the gods and the laws of Zeus, essentially. Just like very interesting comparison, right, to the Robert Oppenheimer story.
And you're so right to call that out. I think that this is something that Nolan is really latching onto, this idea of man of genius starting something, taking advantage of their own genius and unleashing a darkness that they themselves did not quite understand, right? And this is not us reaching here. If you have not seen the film, this is the theme of the movie, and it becomes extremely clear at the end that this is what the great guilt of Odysseus, and why perhaps he did not want to return home, because he did not want to see the darkness that he had unleashed spread upon Ithaca. And I thought that this was such an amazing interpretation of the poem. My biggest, I guess, fascination with that is the parallel between the invaders entering Troy and then the suitors entering Odysseus's house, right? The suitors being a microcosm of like what the Greeks did in Troy, right? And now he has to face that darkness himself. I loved that idea of another theme that we have not talked about with Nolan films, and is present in a lot of his films with his main characters, is not just obsession, but also guilt. Many of them carry guilt for these horrible things that they have done, these men of genius, right? And that is Odysseus in this movie. I was worried that it was going to glorify Odysseus a little too much, especially in the beginning, where it was really showing us the hero status that he's earned. And if you're familiar with the Odyssey, Odysseus is not a good dude. He's a really, really shady kind of guy. Talented, of course, and brave, of course, but shady.
And extremely smart when it comes to war.
And extremely smart when it comes to war.
Yeah.
And the movie builds up the legend, but then tells us who this guy really is and what he feels as though he has done. Nick, what did you think about the use of Athena in this movie?
God, it's so interesting. Like, and you brought it up earlier, right? It's very different from the book in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And honestly, throughout the film, I was like, it was very sporadic when Athena would pop up right during the film, and I mean it's kind of similar in the story, but
It's even more random in the
it's
poem.
even more random. Yeah, but like something felt a little weird about it right throughout the film, and then at the very end when you see that Zendaya's character actually was someone that they killed in Troy,
Hmm.
it kind of brings it home for you, right? Like this is Odysseus is like claim this person as a god in human form, right? In your human clothing, right? And so this has become like almost like his regret envisioned as
Yeah.
Athena, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
such an interesting choice, right? Because in the book, in the poem, it's Athena is a god, right? It's not someone that he views as his version of regret.
Yeah, and the gods are extremely present throughout
Right,
most of the story. Whereas
right,
in the movie, in Nolan's attempt to really ground things, even with magic, right? We don't see the gods
right,
except for Athena, and as you point out, it's actually not Athena.
right. It's just like his manifestation of regret, essentially, in a way. So
I mean, she's both, right? Like she
right,
is the
right.
manifestation of regret, but like to him, that little girl, that woman that was killed is Athena because she literally is slaughtered in the house of Athena in
Yeah,
Troy.
right,
And we see the decapitation of the Athena statue, and that's who this vision, this
right,
amalgamation of a person is to
right.
him.
Yeah. So really interesting creative choice. I didn't have a problem with it at all, right? Like you
I
can't.
think for the realistic take he was going for, I kind of really
Yeah,
enjoyed it actually.
yeah, and kind of like what you said, right? It's Nolan's Odyssey, so there's going to be some creative liberties and some movie telling things that he wants to kind of get home there. You mentioned Hades being one of your favorite scenes. I was
Mm,
extremely looking forward to this as well for a different reason,
mm.
because a couple of times in the Odyssey, Achilles is mentioned, right? Obviously,
Yeah,
in the Iliad, Achilles is much more prevalent, but in the Odyssey, a handful of times, specifically in Hades in the Odyssey, there is Achilles is also there, and there are some lines
mm.
from Achilles. And I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but there's a specific line from Achilles at the end of the Odyssey that I loved. And I was really disappointed that it wasn't in the movie. It makes sense why Achilles isn't in it, right? Like, this is not an Achilles' movie. Like, that's, you can go watch the movie Troy, right? Like, and really, they kind of replaced it, in some instances, maybe they replaced Achilles with Sinon,
Yeah.
or at least the Hades scene. It felt
Hmm.
like Sinon was kind of the replacement for Achilles supposing to be there. The Sinon storyline in general, I don't recall from the poem.
Yeah, he's not in the poem.
Right.
Or,
So
or or
this
if
is,
he is very briefly mentioned.
yeah. So this is kind of another creative liberty from Nolan, adding some extra, dialogue and storytelling here with that particular thing.
I mean, for the sake of expanding on Altinuous's character, who we haven't even
Right.
gotten into.
Right. Which we can transfer to now, right? The point I wanted to make about Hades, that was all I really wanted to say about that addition there. But Atinius' character, my good, like Pattinson is fantastic, man.
Yeah, when
Like
talking about A-list actors who got a chance to expand, oh yeah, he got a
he
chance.
crushed it. He really
Yeah.
he was really the highlight for me, him and Damon. Honestly, Tom Holland playing Telemachus was really cool. I
I
thought he
thought
got
I
better as the
yeah,
film
I,
went
I
on.
thought I thought he was fine.
Yeah,
My problem was I just couldn't unsee Peter Parker.
yeah. Well, that and then also like he's also in Uncharted, and there was
Yeah,
something about his Uncharted character and the way that he played Telemachus, whatever.
Telemachus.
Telemachus, thank you. Gosh, the Greeks.
I know. We're taking Greek today.
Yeah, yeah. That were kind of similar in some ways. Honestly, it might just be how he moves and how he fights, right? So you're kind of
Mm.
picturing those characters, other characters he's played. But I think he got better as the movie went on. That scene at the very end when he finally realizes who Odysseus is, and in that same scene, Odysseus is reunited with his dog, which is just like, I mean, talk about
Argus.
making you cry out of nowhere after a 3 hour movie. Thank you,
Yep.
Christopher Nolan.
Yep. That hit hard.
That was an awesome scene. That was really cool, and
The best boy.
yeah, the best boy. Also, kind of transitioning to the end, right where we are. when he's in the room with the suitors, right? And he's stringing his bow.
Oh yeah, that scene. The archery contest is
the
fantastic.
archery contest and him stringing his bow, and it just brings me back to the sound editing of this film was just so dynamic. Like there were moments where you're just jolted out of your seat because it goes from complete silence to just utter chaos from a sound perspective, right? And that's because of what's going on in the world too, right? It's like calm seas all of a sudden to just torrential hurricane winds and nighttime, like crazy sound editing. But specifically like the way they use the bow, right? Like they use it throughout the film with Nolan, like or with Odysseus, like being a hunter but wanting to give everyone a chance, right? And so he would just like pop the bow so it makes this like sound wave. And the one at the very end, right, where after he's strung the bow and Penelope is like got her back turned because she thinks it's not working, and she hears the bow, right? And like in that moment there's just like chills went down my spine. I was like, this was just such a cool way to kind of set this whole moment up. Like it's coming, right, if you've read the poem. But even then, like Nolan let it build up for you throughout the film because of how many different times Odysseus does it with it in different scenes, and then you finally get that, like the last one. It's like so cathartic for him and for her and for everyone involved. Like he was like wanting him to come back so much. It was really like a cathartic moment, like just hearing that bow just like reverberate throughout.
No,
at the end.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's so much more impactful as a viewer to see or hear something like that. For me, it's the difference between seeing Matt Damon say, "I am Odysseus," to we hear that and we go, "That is Odysseus," right? It's you come to that conclusion,
right? Yeah, and he tested everyone else and then he tested himself essentially, right? And and maybe in some ways it was also proof to him that he's still who he thought he's still who he was when he left 20 years ago, right? Because he can still string that bow and no one else can.
The first thought I had when that happened, when where he's got it strung and then the sound comes out, right, and like there's this deafening silence in the room and everyone's like, oh my god, my first thought was, he's him.
He's him. Speaking of he is him,
get ready.
We have to talk about Travis Scott really quick.
Oh my god, yes we do. All right, so we're real quick before you say what you're gonna say. So I looked up the cast for the movie just because I was obsessed with how many A-listers were in this film.
Yeah,
and that's when I first saw Travis Scott's name, and I was like, this can't be the same Travis Scott. And we look into it, it's like, yep, it sure is. It's like, who on earth could he be playing in this film? I was just so ready. I couldn't wait to see who he was. Go ahead, because it didn't say it on IMDb. It didn't list it.
Yeah, right. And then he opens the film. Travis Scott opens the film like starting to tell the story of Odysseus and Troy in like poem form, right? Like kind of like if you would read the book, right? Or if you had heard the poem like 3,000 years ago, like that's what he was going for, right?
Or he's literally about to sing a song,
right? And it was so cool. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I think the reason it took me so long to settle in after that was because part of me was like, man, I wish that he was almost narrating the poem, the story in a way throughout the film, kind of, and I thought that's what Nolan was going to do at the beginning when that happened. And obviously it doesn't go that route. And then we see Travis Scott again at the very end when he's kind of, it's essentially the same scene. But it's so cool. And I thought he did a really great job. And I honestly, I wanted more of him doing that. Like that was I was sad that we didn't get more of that because it was really just a cool thing for Nolan to do and for Travis Scott to do. I think he crushed it. That was awesome.
I was very curious why he made this decision to cast Travis Scott. And I went into a rabbit hole for it. And then apparently he had been reasonably questioned about this. He was like, well, the reason why, we wanted to pursue this was obviously the Odyssey is a poem. There are bards or poets in the Odyssey, and we wanted to cast someone who could do that. And, who is the modern day poet, if not a rapper? So that's why they ended up looking for a rapper. But I'm curious why specifically Travis Scott. And my secret headcanon is that Christopher Nolan is a huge Travis Scott fan. I really want that to be true.
That'd be so sick. It's true.
That was surprising.
Until he denies it. It's true until he denies it. So, and he'll never deny it now because you put him in a film.
Right. Dude, you know what that means? That means we're gonna see Travis Scott in another Christopher Nolan movie.
Oh, that would be so cool.
all these actors, they all come back.
Yeah,
Christopher
that's
Nolan
very
gets
true.
very attached to his
He
actors.
does. He does. It's a great point. Re-
Nick,
s-
Penelope. We have to address the Penelope in the room. Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway.
Yeah,
Honestly, I mean, solid job. I
solid job.
honestly, I don't think her performance really blew me away at any point. If I'm being quite honest, like, I don't
There
know
was
if it was
there was one
supposed
scene
to.
for me.
Yeah,
There was a
please go
scene where she blew me out of the water.
go ahead.
And there's a scene where Telemachus is telling Penelope his plan
Mm.
after he has met the stranger
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and how he wants to have the suitors come over, and she's upset, reasonably, because she's like, well, you want to send me away. All the only thing that's protecting me right now is the fact that I have something they want, that I have power, right? And as soon as you take that away, there I go into nothing, right? And he asks, what would you rather they have? And she says, I would rather they burn. And like her delivery on that
Yeah,
was, ooh, fiery, as it
yeah.
should have
That's a
been,
great point.
fiery.
Yeah,
I agree. I don't think there was anything that like beyond that. That it
right.
was no Samantha Morton performance, let me tell you. But I did love. I thought she was pretty good for what little she had. But in that moment where
Yeah,
she was allowed to like really expand,
yeah,
like
yeah.
that was great.
That was great. That's a great call out. That was a great scene for her. Yeah, that was awesome. Honestly.
Hmm.
What else? The other back to not sound editing but practical effects.
How does
Like,
he do it? How
dude,
does he do it?
the Cyclops was a
The
freaking
Cyclops.
puppet. Was a
Yeah.
freaking puppet. A
Yeah.
gigantic puppet.
Hmm.
Insane. And they brought like real like 20 sheep in, and they were in that cave for like 3 weeks apparently filming that whole thing. Like
Yes.
unreal. And then they were on every time they're on a ship, they were on these ships. Like,
Hmm.
right? Like people are like throwing up and stuff. Like there's B-roll of just everyone getting just sick as hell. And even the whirlpool, partly CGI, but they used jet skis to start creating it so they could then base the CGI off of the whirlpool created by jet skis. So like
He did all of this on budget and on schedule, and using IMAX cameras, which because of the nature of IMAX, you only have 3 minutes of filming at a time. So they'd be in the middle of these scenes, these dramatic scenes, and be like, "Cut, we're out of film. We got
yeah,
we got to restock every 3 minutes." And he did all
yeah,
of that, including what you just said, the mastery of like these effects on schedule, on
right,
budget.
right.
How?
Yeah, totally insane. Yeah. But that's all the things I want to say. What else you got?
I have one more thing, and it is related to time. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier in our previous Nolan Fest episode, we've talked about how Nolan has in his toolkit a couple things that we see in every Nolan film: obsession, guilt, time, and his experimenting with time or time as a theme in his movies. And we saw both in this movie. As far as the Odyssey goes, it's a very non-linear story. In the poem, it is we cut back and forth between what's happening in Ithaca and what's happening to Odysseus as he lands in Phaeacia, and he's telling the story of how it took him so long to get here, right? And that's replaced with him telling the story to try and remember what happened with Calypso, which plays into him not wanting to acknowledge the darkness that he's unleashed, right? So we get our nonlinear Nolan path there. However, what I really liked here, and this was an interpretation as far as time as a theme goes, is the time that is lost when Odysseus knows that he has to go to war and what that is going to cost him. It's not just going to cost him possibly his life. He's actually not that worried about that. This cocky dude is actually really not worried necessarily about him dying. He's worried about the time he's going to lose while he is away. And this comes up at least 3 times in the movie of what has been taken away from him. And it is that time, it is that humanity. And I love how Nolan continues to stress this in all of his movies. When he returns and he talks about the time that has been taken from him, it just felt straight out of Interstellar. When Coop is talking to Murph at the end there, and like all this time between them has gone away. And, it's been lost for the sake of a mission, right? So, I mean, just as far as Nolan as a storyteller, I was so curious how with his fascinations in time, I was so curious how he was going to work that into the Odyssey, and I think he threads it beautifully, tragically, but beautifully all the same.
Yeah, it's a great point. He's just great with time.
Great with time. Oh, Nick, sorry, one last thing here. Just as far as a thing I didn't like.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? The scenes that are meant to feel big are big, and like I
Mhm.
think the IMAX captures that right, and he makes certain things feel huge. I actually overall was not that thrilled with the cinematography of this movie. I thought it could have stood to be more either A, colorful, or like B, more creative with some of the things that we could have really seen. The movie opens with this title card of in an age where magic is upon us, or like it's something like that. Magic is real, is like what he's saying. And it was strange to me that we don't see anything. He opens with that, and we don't see anything magical for a long time after that cue card.
Yeah.
And I don't know, especially some of the scenes out at sea, like I just expected some different cinematography, and I have a guess as to why perhaps we didn't see more creative camera techniques, and I think that actually might be his choice to use an IMAX camera. The IMAX camera is an enormous camera, and I think it really hinders your ability to be able to expand on a scene, to like walk through a scene, or to like come out into a scene and like give us like this giant scope starting very small, so like I would have liked to have seen some different creative choices as far as the cinematography goes, which is not to say that it's bad. It's not bad. It's good. I just wanted something a bit more for the Odyssey. My favorite shot is, as we mentioned earlier, the Agamemnon shot in the Gates of Troy. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Like that was
Right.
sick. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that was like wild. There was also I'm blanking now. No, I mean, I don't think it gets better than that. That shot really. But like there was okay, there is I forget they make land in this one place with the giants
oh
in the
my
armor.
god, yeah,
So there was a couple scenes there that were really insane because it's like just the
the
difference,
perspective,
the
yeah,
perspective that they
that
were
was
able to
immediately
create.
terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's probably the other thing that stood out, right? But it's very similar, I guess, to the Agamemnon one because it's again like a just a giant,
Yeah, the bigness of what's
yeah,
going on.
just like
Yeah.
the giganticness of the scene.
I
Um,
think I think like for me, like the color gradient just like at certain times
mhm.
didn't feel great. Nolan has
Yeah,
a
it varied too,
it did throughout the
Yeah,
entire film. But like there's a certain like you'll know what I'm talking about here. There's a certain like blue gray color gradient that Nolan uses in so many of his films, and like he used it a lot when they were out at sea, and it's just I don't know, I just don't like it. It's not, it doesn't pop, it doesn't look good, and maybe that's the intention. I don't know, I just don't like it. It's really present throughout all the Dark Knight films, for the record.
yeah, for sure. But also they spend up time in like a bunch of different places during this one, right? So I guess harder to stick to maybe one gradient in that respect.
And
Um,
to what you were saying, Nick, as far as the end goes, like as we got to Ithaca, there is a different gradient that is used at that point, and actually I do like it a lot more. That orange and dark
mhm,
that's present throughout
yeah,
all of the castle scenes. And I mean, a slight change of subject here. I agreed with what you said earlier. My favorite parts of the film actually were toward the end of Ithaca, and I think that's because I
right,
just got really into the drama of what was going on.
yeah, and that also like coming off reading the poem, like that's the freshest in your mind too, like the ending, right? Because
That's true.
we essentially just finished the poem, so it was cool to see how that all kind of came together. Ending wise, a little bit different,
A lot different.
yeah, which is like because in the poem it essentially ends with like Athena like
Saving the
stopping,
day. Yeah.
stopping the battle, and in this case it was them like going west to honor the dead from like the 20 years.
I did not hate this because like it's it's a change, but like if you think hard on it, it's not a huge change because what happens in the poem is the reason why Athena steps in is because a cycle of violence is about to spin endlessly if they do not quell the rage in men's hearts, right? Which
Right.
she comes out and does. And then peace for everyone, and we're all happy,
Mhm.
right? Whereas Odysseus acknowledges that darkness has spread, right? And that it's going to continue to spread and it's going to continue to spiral. But one day we will forget. We will forget our mistakes and peace will return. And while that works itself out, I'm going to go out west and, honor the men that died in the name of Greece and died in my name and were not properly respected. So it is a longer way of getting there, whereas they speed ran it in the poem, but it ultimately comes to the same place with the same themes. So I mean, I wouldn't say it's a gigantic change. It's more so it's Nolan's interpretation, keeping it more grounded, more real. But yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest change that's made. But if you think too much, or if you think more on it, it's not a huge departure from what the source material actually is. But that is our Odyssey, and truly, I had a wonderful time with it. Nick, if you were to give this movie a grade out of 5, what would you give it?
Oh man, I forgot about the grading. I'd say a 4.35. Maybe that's a little low, but I'm sticking to it.
I appreciate considering I was a bit more harsh. I am a bit surprised. I will go with a 4 or 5, ignoring my criticisms, mostly because of just how impressive it is that he pulled this off, and in such a magnificent way.
That's a great point. Yeah.
It really is epic. 3 hours, sure, 3 hours is asking a lot of an audience, but honestly, I had a pretty good time watching it.
Yeah.
And I was amazed throughout most of the film.
Agreed. Well, that'll do it, friends. That's a review. If you can let us know what you think in the comments, throw us a subscribe on YouTube, and until next time,
may the review be with you.
Peace. Change my mind at the end.